right, so now we're going to do problems like 13 and 14, and then you're responsible for doing the rest of the worksheet on your own afterwards. So when we're doing these word problems, I want you to realize that they're a little bit different from the, I know you can't see it, from the other ones that we just did with all the curly brackets and the numbers, okay? So this time, we're going to identify the domain and range of each situation using words and inequalities. So we're no longer doing curly bracket, number, comma, curly bracket. We are going to use words and inequalities. Now, I know you know what words are, but maybe you forgot what inequalities are. So let me remind you, inequalities is where you say like x is greater than something, or x is greater than or equal to something, or x is less than something, or x is less than or equal to something, or you can use y, or you can use any other any other letter you like as well, any other variable, but in this case we are just going to be using x and y. And also before we continue to do these problems, I want you to be reminded of our definitions of domain and range. I want you to remember that domain relates to, do you remember which variable? Is it x or is it y? Hopefully you guys are thinking x. And then I want you to remember that range relates to the y values, okay? Now, with that in mind, let's read the word problem. Victoria recently switched to a new electric company. If she uses between 0 and 400 kilowatt hours of electricity per month, the cost is a set price of $30. If she uses 400 kilowatt hours or more per month, the price is $0.097 per kilowatt hour. Okay, and now we have to use these words to find our domain. Now I want you to think back to that first worksheet we did. That first worksheet we did, we said, let me just try to pull it up. We said that the independent quantity, we learned how to do independent and dependent quantities, right? And then once we knew what our independent quantity is, right over here, we took that independent quantity and we placed it on the x-axis. So I know that's not a very pretty arrow, but we took the independent quantity and placed it on the x-axis. Let's write that down on our current worksheet so we don't forget that. Independent relates to x. So domain x independent. Okay? So all of those are related. Domain, x, and independent. Let me just draw a little line between them so you know they're all connected. Now let's figure out range, y, and I'm sure some of you are guessing it already, but I want to really point it out. We knew that we found our dependent quantity and we placed it, let me highlight this arrow, we placed it on the y-axis. So dependent quantities go on the y-axis. Okay, so let's write that down on our current worksheet. Dependent y-axis, range, y, dependent. Okay, so now that we know the connections between all these ideas that we just learned, we can figure out what our independent and dependent quantities are, and that will help us find our domain and range. Remember the trick that I said we can use to find our independent and dependent quantities is to look for the units that are attached to the numbers. So let's look at our numbers. 400 what? Kilowatt hours, abbreviated as kWh. Let's see, 30 what? $30. 400 kilowatt hours again. And then $0.097 per kilowatt hour. So the two things, the symbols that are sticking out to me are kilowatt hours and dollars. Let's write those down. Not inside our little answer box yet, but let's write kilowatt hours and dollars. Okay, so now we have to think which one depends on which one. So Victoria is going to go to her house and she can live in complete darkness and never turn on her lights. Or she can turn on her lights and use it for a little bit. And what's going to happen when she uses some electricity? The cost is going to go up, right? So the cost depends on the electricity. The dollars depends on the kilowatt hours. The dollars represents the cost, and it's dependent. So let's write here, cost, because it's dependent. And then independent is her electricity. Okay, so now that we have that written out, we can remember that our domain is the electricity. Remember, they're all in the same line. They're all related. So the domain is related to the electricity, or the domain is the electricity. My bad, I should say. The domain is electricity. In what units? Kilowatt hours. So these are our words for the domain. Let's write the words for the range. The range, which is the y value, which is dependent. We said that was cost. So let's write cost. In what units? Dollars, because we're in America. And then now we have to write our inequalities. We're not done yet, right? They want words and inequalities. So now let's write our inequalities. Which letter should I be using for domain? Well, according to the things that we wrote up here, the domain is the x variable. So x, and should x be greater than or less than something? Well, let's read the situation. For her electricity, she can use between 0 and 400 kilowatt hours, or she can use more than 400 kilowatt hours. She can keep her lights off the entire time, or she can turn them on the entire time. The point is, she has to have x greater than or equal to 0. Her electricity can equal 0, that's why there's the equal sign, or it can be greater than 0. So x is greater than or equal to 0. Now let's take a look at the range, the cost. What letter should we use for here? Well, range relates to the y value. We said that already. So we have y. And then let's see, what is the minimum cost she can have? She can spend as much money as she wants on this, right? But there is a minimum. Let's read the situation again. If she uses between 0 and 400 kilowatt hours of electricity per month, the cost is a set price of $30. She has to spend $30. Y is greater than or equal to 30. Okay, so this company is not going to let her spend less than $30. So that's why y has to be greater than or equal to 30. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to let you guys pause the video, or I guess I'll pause the video, and then when we come back, we'll do number 14 together. So don't worry if you don't get it right the first time. I know these problems are harder than the ones that were the other ones on this worksheet, okay? But don't worry. If it's hard, it's a challenge, that's good. All right, unpausing the video now. Let's read number 14 together. Rohan is at an amusement park. While waiting in line, he reads the statistics on the roller coaster he is about to board. The coaster reaches a maximum speed of 75 miles per hour, and the ride lasts 3 minutes. Okay, so let's take a look at the units that are attached to our numbers. 75 miles per hour, and then also 3 minutes. Okay, so this one, we see the word miles, hours, and minutes, but hours and minutes, they talk about the same thing, okay? Hours and minutes both are a measurement for time. And we remember time, I'll just write over here, time is always independent. I don't have enough space, I'm gonna write INDEP for independent. Time is always independent, and independent is part of the domain. Okay, so let's write in the domain is time. And let's just use minutes, okay? And then now let's talk about the range. The range is, where is my other pen? Okay. The other unit that we talk about is miles. So we talked already about time and hours and minutes, but now we have to deal with miles. Miles is a measurement of distance, okay? So distance, the range is distance. And the units they gave us was miles. All right, so now we have our domain and range in words, but we need to use inequalities to describe them. So let's start with domain, okay? So for the domain, well, read this last sentence or this last phrase right here. The ride lasts 3 minutes. So that means the time in minutes has got to be between 0 and 3 because, I mean, that's how long the ride is. It's not going to be longer than that, and you can't go negative minutes. So here's how you write between 0 and 3 minutes. 0 is less than or equal to, what letter do we want to write? We're talking about domain here, and domain is always x. So 0 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3. Literally, x is in between 0 and 3. So that's our domain in inequalities. And then we also have to write our range. So the range is y value. And the distance, well, we don't really know how long the distance is for this roller coaster. But what we do know is you cannot have negative distance. So write y is greater than or equal to 0. And that's how you do number 14. Okay, so make sure if you guys are struggling with these problems, you have to ask questions. Otherwise, I will never know and I'm not able to help you, okay? With online learning, it's more important that you ask questions. I can't tell if you are looking at your phone or if you're working on your paper. So you have to take responsibility for yourself, okay? All right, I believe in you.